So, where do we find you? Where do we find you right now? Are you at home in Margaret River?
I'm at home in Fremantle at the moment. We moved back up to the city for a little while for my son's last year of education.
Hmm. But how does it feel to be home? I mean, following you, it seems like you're away so much. It must be nice to be kind of on home soil, I guess.
Yeah, I kind of been it's kind of been a long time coming, about 5 to 7 years of always planning to be very stationary for this year of my son's last year of schooling. I really didn't want to be away. And so I just yeah, I knew there was lots of stuff I could be doing from home and just wanted to be around every morning and every night when he comes back and soak up the little incidental moments that are the gold. And yeah, having a daughter who is 21 now and just, yeah, the fleeting moments and you really want to be around for him. So I was able to do a lot of work from home and just be around him. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's been good.
yeah, that's a beautiful thing, and I guess it kind of connects a little bit with talking about the upcoming album. Um, I guess you've had some time at home, so it's finally had a chance to kind of come to fruition. Is that kind of, I guess it's a bit of a perfect storm. Does that feel about right?
Yeah, in some ways they kind of Venn diagrammed over each other in a way. It was, yeah, they all kind of just kind of coalesced, I guess. There've been some storms brewing that made certain decisions more I don't know, tangible. Giving walking away from my solo album project that I was self-producing and engineering and kind of giving up a little bit on that and throwing my hands up in the air allowed for some new stuff to enter the space that was provided.
Mm.
And in doing so, this concept of four seasons kind of came to me. Because I think before then I was like, I threw my hands up in the air. I was like, I don't know if I can have a band. What did I do to have a band? I don't know if you ever have those moments in your life where you're like, I don't know how I did that. I actually don't know how I did that. I don't know if I have the naivety to do what I once did. And I was having a moment like that, and like, how would I be able to have a band again and captain a band and lead a band and deal with the complexities of human nature and being a friend, a band leader, a musician, and a boss and a cohabitator on a bus. And I was just like, ah. Oh. And somehow this four seasons came to me of, well, don't worry about that at the moment. You need to heal. You've just, both your father and your father-in-law passed within 40 hours of each other in a palliative care situation at home during lockdown. Yeah, you can't see the forest through the trees on your album. You're raising young adults, and that's complex, and your anxiety is peaking, and there's lots going on. How about just stop? And in that stopping, the four seasons came, and healing became a priority, and kind of as a metaphor or as a symbol. Um,
Mm.
the ambient album that I've wanted to make for the last 10 or 20 years now seemed like the only thing I was able to do.
Yeah.
This complex, overproduced kind of self-engineered thing to like, cool, I'm gonna get a professional engineer in and I'm gonna do very, 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 very simple music and do baby steps and just try to tend to myself and gain some confidence back up in this whole realm of recording whilst ticking a box of something I wanted to do, which was essentially just be part of the soundtrack that I've heard over the last 3 decades when I've ever been at places of well-being,
Mm.
places of whether it's yoga centers or acupuncture, kinesiology, massage, you name it. And I was just always thought I was driven to make some music like that at some point to offer my skill set into that realm of that culture. So
Mm.
it all just kind of culminated in this perfect storm, which is like, yeah, now's the time. In fact, it's the only thing you can do.
I agree with all of that. You know, it feels like kind of a deepening or a maturing into your own life, you know, like death and fatherhood and a sort of maturing. And it feels like, you know, I'm thinking of the metaphor of maybe a hearth, you know, and the fire reaches that point where it's just going, you know, there's just the coals are nice and hot and you can throw another log on, it just burns consistently, you know, rather than the big flames of the band and everything, it's just everything's settling. That's
Yeah.
what I'm hearing in a way.
Yeah, it's definitely a rite of passage, and
Mm,
an overlaying of, there's this there's there's the patriarch, passing this ideas of fatherhood. There's man, what it means to be a man,
mm,
raising a young man, and death kind of all around in its most profound sense of like, oh, old ways can no longer survive if you choose to go forward and you want something different. And so, yeah, I think ways of seeing myself, ways of behaving, or ways of operating, as I said, the anxiety and the PTSD and the strain on the adrenal system and the nervous system over a lifetime of carrying some of those traumas, and also my lifestyle of as a very adrenalized performing lifestyle. Um, something needed to change, and it didn't mean I didn't want to do it. In fact, the whole Four Seasons concept came about because I did want to have a band, and I still want to do that, and I love those things. I just didn't want to do them the same way. I didn't want to do them with the operating system and the technology of an early 20-year-old. I I'm 50 next year, and I appreciate some of the things I've learned, and am not really interested in um you know doing the things the way I used to do them. Partly because sometimes they don't interest me, partly because I've seen enough cause and effect to know, I can look at the data. Perspective is an amazing thing. You go, oh, okay, look, so this keeps on happening, then this will keep on happening unless you deal with something. So, let's talk about your fear of confrontation or your trust issues if you want to have another band, because otherwise the same issues are going to keep on coming up with people that you work with, and all jobs, in my opinion, are most of them at least, they're relationships. They're relationships. Even my own personal re relationship with music, it's a relationship, and so how one communicates and deals with people is important. And I guess this is, that's probably a very long out overlay of, something that's just taking place, which, is a rite of passage for people of in my age. You get a very distinct perspective shift that happens, because in many ways you're halfway through your life. You're now, in my case, I was wiping, I was showering the person who once showered me. There's some pretty deep shit going on there. And also marriage, 23 years of marriage, and you get to see a combination of what works and what doesn't. And, I think a lot of us uh, will reserve our worst behavior for our most intimate relationships that we end up taking for granted. And at some point in time, usually around this time, 20, you know, 20 years in, people start getting divorced because it's like, no, yo, you can't, this is no longer feasible. And so that was just happening everywhere. And it was either, keep going the way you're going and, sleep in the bed you make, or um try something different. And so I've always been blessed to have a good relationship with uh the universe, that if I don't get if I don't get on to get on with what I know what to do, the universe always goes, okay, cool, you're not going to do it, and pushes me out of the nest, whether that's through anxiety or whatever. So yeah, it's all part of that big
mm.
thing.
There's a bit in there, brother. There's a bit in there. It's thanks for sharing all that, man. And yeah, I definitely resonate on a number of levels. Turning 56 this year myself, so a lot of that is speaking to me in my life. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
I feel like we should kind of orientate anyone that's listening. So John, there's a new album coming out in 2 days' time, Running River, and so we figured we'd have this chat around that. And I'm also on the back of listening to your live performance last night from your home, which is just beautiful. You know, sharing three songs from the album, and serendipitously, let's call it, it was World Meditation Day yesterday. So I guess that offering was in celebration of that, and I appreciated listening, brother. I thought it was absolutely beautiful, and songs were really touched me. I particularly enjoyed Surrender. Actually, there was something in Surrender which I felt something really emotional came up inside me from very deep. I wonder, it kind of feels like a bit of a um, it kind of marks the album, doesn't it? That one, Surrender. At least for me, it did. And I'm wondering, could you speak to that song for a minute and how it came about?
I mean, it's interesting. I'm glad, well, first of all, I'm glad that it had a good effect on you, and that was, once I'd done the recording, and that was the intention. Um, a lot of these songs downloaded within about 3 hours. Once it's quite a beautiful phenomenon. Once you make a decision to do something, the universe seems to go, okay. And once I got the download of the Four Seasons, that gave me a story and a structure. And I feel like, if you listen to the words of, Yuval Harari or some other great thinkers, we are driven by story, like give me a good story, and I give me a good story, and I'll make this device, the a pillar, or this $50 note is worth something. It's just a story. But once you get a story, especially my mind needs context, being a little bit attention deficit. Once I get a story, I'm like, I can build upon that. Me going, I want to have a band one day, is just like, what is that? That's not even a story. That's just a concept. It's, you give me a story I can build upon. And so once I got that download, um, I went to my living room with a loop pedal and sat next to the fireplace and just wrote most of the songs in about 3 hours over 2 nights, and that one song, I can't exactly remember, where it came in the deluge of, like, of um of songs, but I remember naming them all, and I literally just sit with them and go, okay, that's the name for this song. And so it's funny because once I'd recorded the whole album, I put it out to a few people who, either work in a related culture, yoga or mindfulness or other things, and they all pick surrender, and then, as things happen, when you're kind of, when you're listening without your ears and your eyes, and you're listening with your heart. I know that sounds as cliched as it sounds. It's like when you're listening with some other organelle other than those ones, at least, um, you get this strange hindsight where you're like, oh, 2 months later, you're like, oh, that song's called Surrender. Oh, and that's the one that resonated. This is going to be the first single. And you're like, that's exactly what I had to do to actually even start this journey, was surrender. I had to give up a whole solo album. And like, you're like, oh. And I'm sure, I see the instruments behind you. I'm sure you've had those moments where you've written songs or something, and you've made something, and you don't really understand the lyric or something. And then it's only the months later that you're like, oh, that's what this, that's what I was divining, but it's limited hardware wasn't going to be able to understand, the bandwidth of what you're taking in. So yeah, it's definitely a kind of like a hallmark of the whole moment. It's just give up, stop for a second, surrender.
Mm, feels like a collective intention as much as an individual one right now.
Yeah, it's really strange because I think I'm constantly struck by duality, and polarization and polarity,
Mm.
and the sun and the moon, and you know, air and fire and what have you. And it's, part of me, he's always been an activist. I feel like that we all hold different roles, in society. And, part of one of my roles, a part of, I think what I really do well is probably create some magic through making music and give people the chills, and give them a sense of wonder and the unknown and the divinity. I think that's what I do when I do what I do best. And it's not something I intended to do. It's just something that I've realized that, I'm not here to make people remember or forget or politicize them or energize them or all the, I'm actually just here to give them the chills. I know that when I get the chills in the audience, I'm like, hallelujah. Like, oh, that's right, we're gonna be okay. Or oh, that's right, that's what the idea of the universe or God is, or whatever, God, when I'm in the audience and I get the chills, that's what I feel. I feel some sense of awe. And I realize, oh, that's actually my main job.
Mm.
Now that being held here, that's one, that's where I'm most potent. But kind of secondary to that, or just right afterwards, I am I'm I think I'm a how do I put this without sounding like a dick? Like I think part of my role, I protect. Like my wife is a builder, she builds things, she doesn't want to fight. And I don't really want to fight either, but I'm not going to allow destruction of culture and people and a good family at the hands of corporate uh psychotic behavior. So I do have a very protective side of me, one who is a protector, and that's why I've been involved in activism throughout the years, or protecting country.
Mm.
And so those two things sit in a very strange relationship with each other, because I'm getting to your point, which is about surrendering. Part of me is like, yeah, just surrender to the madness, and surrender to the dis-ease and this way of being in this patriarchal capitalist rat race. um Surrender to even your trauma,
Mm.
like stop trying to run away from your trauma, just like surrender to it for a second, and there'll be this letting go, like in those old proverbs. And then there's part of me, like with everything that's going on in the Middle East right now, is like, do not relent. Do not relent to the bully with a big gun and a big stick, who's going to just plow his way through innocence to get their point across, or to deal with their own trauma. So I'm always stuck with that thing of like, surrender and don't surrender. I mean, that's one of the conundrums. But that's also the journey, isn't it? So
Like it is, man. It is. Maybe, the surrender in its truest sense is, the ability to kind of dance in the middle between all that tension. Maybe
yeah.
that's the place of surrender.
Yeah, actually, thank you. Yeah, I think that's what
Mm.
it is. It's actually surrendering from, like, it doesn't have to be black and protection, or, white and, just surrender to all. Actually surrender to the polarity, to the
Mm.
black and whiteness, and actually understand that something in between.
Mm.
Nice one.
Well, I think
Yeah,
that
thank you,
honestly, I mean,
Asher.
no, that's fine, man. I think when I listened to the music last night, I felt like that's the space it was taking me, to this place of, being okay in the tension and being okay in the madness. And it's kind of like a place in between, in between the tension of it all. And that's, to me, that in some sense, that's also the place of meditation. When we
Mm.
close our eyes, just being there and being the kind of the eye of the storm for a little while. And for me, um, the songs from the album I heard, that was my soundtrack for being in that place.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, that's good. That's good to know. And everything you're saying there really resonates. I think that's, once again, it's like, music for me is that when I said it's probably where I'm most potent. It's like I think it brings the best out in me in
Mm.
ways that I don't even know. It's my greatest teacher. Like if you let my mind get involved, it probably would create something completely different. Or if I was talented enough, it's like this is all I know to do. So yeah, I'm glad that the art kind of ends up having that effect, even though I'm still dealing with like the rub of it all. It's like it is the music is a catharsis to reach that. So I'm
Ah,
glad that was the main intention. Once I had recorded it, it was just like, well, how can this be there for others in this tense time, in this, tense and absolutely sublimely beautiful time,
yeah.
sitting in the middle of it all.
Again, I was going to ask you this, like where the name of the album came from, like Running River, because for me, again, there's that tension of the stillness and the movement and everything else. And I just, was there something specific that you were kind of pointing at with the name, or is it something that just came in another way?
It came in another way. I did quite a few years ago. I did a program called the Mankind Project. So in that process of naming, Running River came to me essentially, and I've been always drawn by fresh water. I moved to Australia in 1986 after my parents got divorced, and my dad was moving home to Australia, and I said, "Hey, find a place with a river in the backyard." I was 9, so whatever. And then he did. He found a place with a river in the backyard because that was the only place he could afford. And 20 years later, we found out that my great great grandfather, Joseph Elijah Butler, was buried in an unmarked grave in that town. And so
Wow.
very strong connections to river country, into that country, Pinjarra country in the southwest of Western Australia. And the cover of the album and a lot of the videos off the album are that river.
Mm, that's beautiful, man. I love it. Yeah. And just talking about the album itself, I mean, I heard you say, last night that you felt it was for the practitioners and practices alike. It's literally just an album for everybody to kind of find that space in meditation, whatever they're doing. And I kind of like that idea, that you've done that quite deliberately. And you mentioned also that, the spark of this idea came about 10 years ago, but for all these various reasons, kind of couldn't happen. Did you have an idea back then of the actual music, or was it just kind of an intention to put an album like this out, and then you had that big download that came in a couple of hours? Or was there something already there 10 years ago about what it might feel like, what it might sound like?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the music that I'm inspired by, like classical Indian music and Celtic music and blues music, those forms always have an intro that's quite meandering, that doesn't have a time signature as such. And it has the, in the classic one would be, classical Indian music that has that, that really great preamble before something. And I was really touched by that music, discovering open tuning as a younger man. And so I always do that before most of my songs. I'd always do this preamble. It just came very natural. And I think a lot of kind of folk music has that. And so I always knew that was going to be my basis, that there's going to be this Celtic Indian-esque kind of meandering thing that happens, like that happens before Ocean, or
Mm,
songs like Valley, or what have you. And so yeah, that was the basis. And then, sitting with the loop pedal, literally sitting on the amp with the loop pedal next to a fireplace, I just made these beds, a lot of what I've been wanting to do over the last 10 or 20 years is I do a lot of guitar percussion during Ocean and other songs. And I always wanted to make an album that had that as the basis. And so yeah, making sure that heartbeat was always in was kind of the first protocol. And then it was just about having some meandering, scale work over the top that was fairly improvised. In fact, the whole thing's improvised in a lot of ways. But yeah, that was the start.
mm. I'd love to turn a little bit and chat about your own kind of relationship with meditation itself. I mean, did the gift of meditation find you as a young man, or did it come a little later, or what was the story there?
It's, it's a little meandering story. I mean, I was going to there's something called the Self-Realization Fellowship Center, which is was there was a kind of a teacher or thinker out of India called Paramahansa Yogananda, and he had a couple centers throughout Southern California actually, and my mom used to go to these centers, and I was the middle child. The eldest one was 16, he wasn't going. The youngest one was like 18 months, and she wasn't going. I was the 8-year-old who was going. So I spent Sundays meditating or learning how to meditate as a kind of an 8-year-old, and meandered in and out of those things. Um, and then as a 15-year-old or 14-year-old, my mom did a TM course, Transcendental Meditation course, and signed me up with her. Seemed just to tag along along with
Mm,
whatever my mom was doing,
yeah.
and got my mantra and learned how to meditate, and still remember that mantra and still use it as of this morning. Yeah, and like all things for me, at least, I go in and out of things, and yeah, still meditate. Sometimes I meditate, twice a day. Very rarely. Sometimes I meditate every day, getting better at that. But yeah, some days I'm on it. Also did Vipassana, where, after Vipassana, I meditated, twice a day for an hour every day for a year. Um, and like totally meditated this line away during those 8 days of complete meditation concentration camp that Vipassana kind of is. um, so I've had to deal with, yeah, many different moments where it keeps on going, come back, and it's there's a science, and if you Debashish Bhattacharya, in Indian Hindustani slide guitarist who I had the privilege to learn with for a couple of weeks in Kolkata a couple of years ago. He uses this adage, and it's not his. I think it comes from another philosopher. But through discipline comes freedom. And why I say that it's the science is that if you sit with that long enough, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I always need to hear it again and again, is if you sit with something, you sit with the discipline long enough, you will get freedom from some of your ailments, from whether it's anxiety or what have you. And I think before you know anybody gets handed out any pharmaceutical drugs for mental health stuff, which I've partaken in when needed. But first point of call should be, are you exercising? And do you have any mindfulness exercises that you do? Meditation would be one. And, I think meditating twice a day and a bit of exercise could do amazing things for mental health. And it is a science. It's just like, you know, chop wood, carry water. And when you do, you will not be thirsty and you will not be cold. But you're not going to get it without chopping wood and carrying some water.
Yeah, man. Wow, I feel all of that. It sounds like, from 8 years old, meditation's kind of been a through line, and comes and goes in various forms and practices, but it's always there. And I love what you said around discipline, man. I'm hearing Rumi, that angels only shine after they achieve discipline. And it's kind of there's it for some people it might sound counterintuitive to put angels and discipline in the same sentence, but it's very true. Very
Yeah,
true.
this idea of order and chaos.
Mm,
Uh, you look at the word chaos as being like hyper creativity as well. It doesn't have to be like bedlam. It's this yeah, you need both. You
mm,
need, I know when I have a lot of order, before I record or if I want to even play guitar, I'll often clean my studio or my room. It's a complete ritual just to, I'm gonna make this a sacred space
mm.
that is worthy of this intention. And then I get on a guitar and I just, you know, I create either nonsense or beauty or something in between, but it took the discipline just to open up that space first. And that's whether or not I even make a knife in the shed. I'll clean the shed, like clean your space. Studios, just like set the space. Same with meditation, like just set the space. I don't want to be around. I don't want all this noise and chaos around. I need to create some order. And then when I got some order, I can go out into the unknown where it's boundless.
Here we are dancing in the in-between again. But even the idea of cleaning the space is kind of like, maybe meditation is just cleaning the space on the inside. So in a sense, that ritual of cleaning up your studio is in fact a meditation that's performed before you perform,
Uh,
you know.
Totally.
Mm,
It's ritualistic behavior, and
mm.
ritualistic behavior is a symbology for a bit of order, you know.
Because I was going to ask you whether you had a form of meditation practice or something you did before you went on stage, but you've kind of just answered that in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I'll straight up meditate, you know,
Right.
before I go on stage. But then I'm meditating when I practice as well. Like I'll practice for a half hour, especially the Hindustani slide picking stuff, which is extremely kind of rigorous. And then I'll meditate by doing my vocal exercises, and um, I'll burn a whole bunch of different stuff. Burn some sage, burn some Palo Santo, burn some Kungra, you
Mm,
know. Set, you know, I people come into my room and they're like, "What the hell's going on?" You know? And I'm like, "I'm just cleansing it, man. I'm, you know, in different capital city every 23 hours. You know, I'm in
mm,
different rooms. I've opened my rib cage wide open to show my bearing heart and all my muck and all my gold, and to thousands of people, and then they walk away, and I have to close it up and mend myself up, and ritual helps me do that, you know, and whether the ritual of meditation or smudging, or they've just become ways of just they're just other modalities. You know, some people stretch before running. Some people plug in their computer so it has enough charge. You know, it's just kind of it's nuts and bolts kind of stuff. It's I think a lot of times people want to make it into some esoteric, you know, esoteric kind of playing with glitter kind of stuff. And I love playing with glitter, by the way. But it's rooted in quite a bunch of rigor and discipline, and just pragmatic kind of science of.
I feel that because I think a lot of people come to meditation practice and there's this idea of having a kind of peak experience or some kind of, spiritual ascension. And I think so much of our life is about up and out these days. Everything's got to get bigger and better and faster and shinier. And, what I'm hearing from you is that, meditation is kind of more of an in and down practice, more of a grounding or a rooting type of thing. Um, and again, coming back to the album, that's kind of what I felt there. It's not uplifting in the sense of taking me up and out of my body. It's actually the opposite, and it's another thing that I really liked.
Oh, good. How
Mm.
many songs have you gotten to listen to? Just those three,
Yeah,
or?
just the three. Yeah, just the three.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
And even in that one, the other one I wanted to mention, you talked about the mantra that you were given when you were a very young boy, and the chanting in that third song that you played last night was really beautiful. And you talked about this idea of not wanting to kind of take on a particular culture, a particular mantra, but kind of almost intuiting your own. And I thought that was really, really beautiful. Could you speak to that?
Um, yeah, it's funny. Like once I decided to do this healing album, like or this ambient album, you know, I'm a pretty earnest guy in the sense that, you know, once I get in the sand pit, you know, no toy is out of limits, you know. So my cedar Native American flute came out that I've written one song on, and I played that one song on the album, which is a beautiful instrument, and it's just been waiting for that moment. And the other one was chants. Yeah, chanting's really uh powerful, I think, in creating a certain kind of brainwave that I don't know the name of, whether it's theta or delta or but uh when I was given those sticks by Uncle Wayne Webb, you know, I went down to the cliffs there, and I sang that song way before even knowing that I was going to make an album. I just that those were just the words that came to me as I was sitting next to Artu there. And so when the time came to make the album, it just seemed to kind of make sense. I didn't know how it was going to turn out. I didn't know it was going to be such a big percussive kind of thing, but all my love of hip hop and like tribal kind of marching band stuff got in there. So when you listen to the album, I guess on this Friday when it comes out, you'll hear it's kind of quite a big sound. And yeah, because I just I didn't have any connection to to good good chants, to good prose on that front. I mean, I sure I could have found some, but in order to do the work that I need to do in a way that I feel that has an authenticity to it, especially something that's so kind of hard on the sleeve and out there. It needed to go cool. I needed to be able to live by it in a way that felt right for me. And mind you, if I would have had a chant from those early days of meditation that I'd grown up with, I probably could have embodied that authenticity through my relationship to it, but I didn't have that. So I wasn't about to start for an album,
Mm.
searching for some chants to, it didn't feel right. So, yeah, making that chant up way before the concept of this album, and then it getting onto the album made perfect sense. And it was just a way of also honoring my uncle and those sticks, those powerful sticks that have their own story, and that beautiful country. And yeah, and I'm really stoked that the video for the song came out so well as well. I made a visual. I'm kind of segueing here a little bit, but
That's all good.
um, I made a visual component for every song. Like there's 10 songs on the album. They're all 10 minutes long. And I'm like, I don't make 10 videos. Wow. And but they're all meant to be, really simple. And as much as this music was meant to be an antidote to the nervous system in this highly technological onslaught of data and ultraviolence and sell and buy and you could be better, just look at this filtered dream and fizz. I wanted the music to be the opposite of that. I also wanted to create these videos that were like if the music was an ear massage, then the videos were trying to be an eye massage. And so slow time, and I'm really happy with how that video turned out, which ends up flying right past me. This drone flies right over Billa, which is Margaret River, and flies right past Uncle as it goes to color. And yeah, I was really happy to kind of honor our relationship and honor his country, honor his connection to country. And yeah, he's playing the sticks he gave me in that video. And yeah, this is a lot of kind of lovely things that lined up, beautifully.
Yeah, man, I love hearing the passion even in your voice when you're talking about it. It's there, man. It's in the heart. I love it. So, I wanted to kind of maybe as we kind of bring this conversation to a close, like if I'm sitting in front of the album and about to play it for the first time, like, what would you say to me?
Breathe.
Simple as that, right? Isn't it? Because I imagine you're going to get, practitioners, and what a lovely gift that is for, for people like myself, meditation teachers and the rest, that they now have this beautiful, beautiful kind of body of work that they can just work with, and that's amazing. But also for people that are all sorts of experience in terms of meditation, maybe never meditated before, and play the album or meditate every day. I think that it's going to speak to everybody. So I imagine that when you sit down in front of it, there's going to be, yeah, a lot of different kinds of people at different stages of their lives, wishing for different things. And
Yeah. I was talking to my brother-in-law the other day. He's like, "This is great music to work with. I'm on a computer all day doing graphic design. I'm really loving this music." I'm like, "Sick." And some people are like, "I put my kids to sleep on it.
mm,
Kids just fall right to sleep." I'm like, "Great." I fell asleep every time I was listening to it while I was recording it. So yay. About other people who do ayahuasca ceremonies and everything, thank you. I wanted something like this. So it's like it's pretty broad spectrum, and I'm happy that it will just be there for, you know, just for that. It was nice just to do just for that. It's obviously not it has a strange lack of expectation,
mm,
which is perfect for any kind of practice. Like
yeah,
I
yeah.
meditate so I'll be enlightened, or it's the same. I didn't make this album to be, like get me on the top of the charts. Not that I ever really do, but yeah. I'm happy to just go out there and just find a place and
Mm.
a bit of that maybe.
think that's beautiful, man. And yeah, I love what you're saying there. It's this idea of it has no expectations. Like don't expect anything when you listen to it, and that's kind of the idea. Like surrender the agenda.
Yeah.
Um, just kind of be with it. Breathe. Maybe that's what it comes down to.
Surrender the agenda. I love that saying. You give me
Yeah.
good pearls. Thank you very much, Asher.
Well, that's just something I like to use, when a lot of people come to meditation and they're expecting something.
Yeah.
I want to, lower my anxiety or decrease my depression or get off prescription drugs or whatever it happens to be. Um, and I feel like if that's what you're leaning towards, it's less likely to happen. Like meditate because it's a good thing to do. Just meditate because meditation.
Yeah.
Because you need to breathe, and by surrendering the agenda, we actually find that these things occur as a side effect other than the thing that you're aiming at.
It's so true. It's such a conundrum for, I don't know, the Western mind too. I can't speak for the Eastern mind or any other
Mm,
mind for that matter, but like yeah, we're so built towards expectation. And I was talking to my team going, because there's been an amazing amount of flow with this album, we made 10 videos. It's like those things, one video can take months. And there we were, like I was making the videos with another videographer, like, and we're just smashing them out. And I was like, how can we take this philosophy to the other albums that we do? Because yeah, we've done great work, but there's been such an ease and a fun and a flow that's happened. There's been a phenomena that's taken place when we didn't try to get on radio, that we weren't hoping that it was going to get curated by somebody, when it wasn't going to hit the charts and all these things that the mechanics of what we do does. And I value everybody I work with, and I'm stoked for all the success that we've had, but like I cannot ignore the flow of this project. And I'm like, as much as I'm wanting to hark back to what I was saying before about old modalities and different ways of doing things, there's a lesson that this the project has shown us. And yeah, that Bukowski saying of like, don't try. It doesn't make sense to the Western mind. I mean, don't try. I want to be calm. I want to be successful. I don't want to be unhappy. They just don't try. But it's a real conundrum for this mind, this modern mind. So yeah, I
yeah,
hear.
man. The Western mind then ends up trying not to try.
Yeah, totally. And it just doubles down. It's like I'm trying not to try, not to try, not to try, not to try.
Yeah, it's exactly it. I love that, man. And what's so beautiful is because you're kind of, following this particular thread, you wind up speaking to someone like me from Meditation Australia, and not a music journalist, and that's probably not going to happen in any other frame, with any other album. That's
Yeah,
beautiful.
exactly. It's actually more enjoyable conversation. It's kind of more where I'm at. Like I love getting philosophical, and so it's nice to go there. And it's been nice for my whole team as well. My manager, reaching out to different organizations and having different conversations. And he's just like, man, this is a great project.
Mm.
No manager's ever going to tell you to make an ambient album. You should make the next step is an ambient. He's loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's beautiful, man. Well, listen, I'm conscious of your time, John. So I just want to say thank you, man. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I'm looking forward to hearing the whole album in a couple of days' time. And anyone who's listening, just get it, put it on, breathe.
Yeah. It'll be at your fingertips, so it'll be easy enough to get. But yeah,
Mm.
great to talk to you, Asher. Thanks for the great combos and in your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Catch you out
Cheers,
there.
John. Take care.